StockPulse Newsroom, talking Northisle Copper and Gold today. Northisle Copper trades as NCX in the Toronto Venture Exchange as they announce a plan to define their initial resource at Northwest Expo. I'll run through the details of that news and give us a general update. I've got the president and CEO, Sam Lee. Sam, appreciate you taking the time here. Looks like you're about to define an initial resource. We'll get there. Before we do, though, maybe take a step back here and walk investors through how 21 ended for the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Robin. Great to be here on your show. Look, I started in October 2020. So 2021 for us was quite new, and we were essentially endowed with a massive project that hosted over 5 billion pounds of copper equivalent resources already. Of that, approximately about 33% of that is gold, and the rest of it is copper. So this is a project that's got incredible attributes. We defined it through a preliminary economic assessment in 2021, which yielded a $1.1 billion after-tax net present value at 8%. This is done at $3.25 copper. So for every 25-cent movement in copper, you increase the NPV by about $300 million. So a massive leverage to copper. But what you have to also realize is that 33% of this is also gold. So our byproduct, if you were to put for instance, a stream or a royalty at a 5% cost of capital, which is entirely reasonable these days for development projects, as we're seeing in the news with all of these streaming and royalty deals coming into play, that byproduct credit is about a $1.1 billion US upfront payment. That is a massive, massive, massive byproduct credit. That's not even our primary credit, right? So, the whole idea around electrification, the whole narrative around decarbonization, about being carbon net neutral by 2050, which is aspirational. It's a wonderful goal to have, but it's quite aspirational. This is not going to happen without copper. And right now, over the next 10 years, the copper deficit that people are calling for is between 7 to 9 million tons of copper deficit. So to put that in context, that's 7 to 9 of Escondida's, the world's largest copper projects that need to come online. And I can tell you, these projects, forget about being permitted, they haven't even been found yet. This project itself, what this will serve as an incremental contribution to that need for copper that is just coming right up the rear right now. So, that's our modus operandi. That's our business. That's our business plan. And, the underpinning asset is this this North Island project that I just described as per the PEA. So we are based in British Columbia, BC, Canada. So this area has seen 7 projects of this ilk being permitted over the last 15 years. There's 2 major projects that are undergoing permitting right now under the NDP government. And it's a place where more and more you're seeing activity, M&A activity, which is, by the way, my background. I was an investment banker for over 20 years, metallurgist by training, but I ran CIBC's global mining practice based out of Vancouver. So all my clients were the big incumbents. M&A has really been a gravitating force towards British Columbia, with Newmont, Newcrest, Hochschild, et cetera, all coming in very aggressively to British Columbia over the last year and a half. So all that comes into play as it relates to this opportunity, certainly underpinned by a very, very large copper and gold project that's in a permittable region and that has, quite frankly, second to none infrastructure. I say that it's because it's right beside BHP's Island Copper Mine, which was in production for 24 years. So the roads, the power, even the port is all in place. Obviously needs to be upgraded, but just to put it in context, the port is only about 25 kilometers away on an already existing road from where we are. And that port is the closest deep sea water port from continental America to Japan, which is where BHP sold its concentrate. So everything is in place for this project: infrastructure, support from the communities, First Nations, and certainly an incredible macro environment that's going to drive this forward. So you talked about Northwest Expo. So that is, in fact, the, believe it or not, the SIZZLE to what the story is. So we recently announced our plans for 2022. on Northwest Expo. And so what really excites us about this project is it's a higher grade gold zone within the same porphyry system that we have. So it's only about 3 kilometers away from our defined project. And it's showing about 4 to 5 times higher gold grades than what our project yields, and over 2 times gold grades that you would expect in a porphyry around the world, the average porphyry around the world. So this is a very exciting point for the project. Then there's multiple options with this type of grade. There's multiple options as to what you could do, how this can be additive to the project.
Yeah. So wow, I guess you set up here a pretty exciting year. So I guess give us how, if we're having a cocktail December 31st, or how did it go for you? What was the year all about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the primary goal from an exploration perspective, which is going to be the driver for exciting news coming ahead, is twofold. One is to define a 40 to 50 million ton resource. So that's the envelope that we have outlined in our press release that we feel very confident around being able to define as a 43-101 resource. We had in the press release illustrated an average grade of approximately 1.2 grams per ton of gold equivalent, which is about 2 times higher than what you would expect in a porphyry system, a global porphyry system. And the idea, if you put a reasonable specific gravity assumption on that, that's a plus 1 million ounce incremental gold to our account. Now, right now, we're currently over, if you include the inferred and indicated resources, we're over 10 million pounds of gold equivalent. So this is a significant part of the story. Again, it's a higher grade part of the story. The second part of it is the metallurgy. So I'm a metallurgist by background. Before I was an investment banker. And the 2 things that are going to drive this is obviously grade and recoveries off of the gold. The gold does report into pyrite, which shows a bit lower grades from a recovery scale based on our PEA. But we believe very strongly that through the different deportation and efforts that we're undergoing currently, is that gold actually does recover out in higher quantities when you do have higher grade. So, for example, BHP, the Island Copper Mine, saw recoveries up to 70% throughout the history of mining for 24 years. We would like to get to that level and clearly believe that we have higher grade. Right now, again, our grade is about 4 to 5 times higher than what we currently have in our resources, and approximately the same as to what BHP had in their Island Copper Mine as well. So the correlation being higher grades, higher recovery. So that's also a program that we're starting very, very quickly, and I'd like to have that completed within the next couple of quarters. The third is the exploration around the entire region. So we have a 50-kilometer strike of pretty much all the same porphyry system, right? And that starts from the BHP Island Copper mine, which we don't own. We're just adjacent to that historical mine. But all of the exploration signatures are pointing to very, very similar type of alterations and structures. And so if you can imagine, this 50-kilometer area has a tremendous amount of potential. One of the areas is we call Pemberton Hills. It was a joint venture where we had with Freeport. We did about $3 million of exploration and drilling work. We believe that this may be the elephant hunting game changer within the porphyry district. It is going to be very deep from what we can tell. We've done a little bit of drilling on that back in 2021, which indicated as such, but we have established a hypothesis that's going after the shallower or potential porphyry zone, which we believe is tilting towards the valley. So IP on this area in this valley specifically to confirm our thesis. And then from there on, I think it'll be ripe for another partnership where we can, obviously use larger companies to expedite the exploration program there. And then on the project development side, like we continue to develop this project at a rapid pace, and that is going to all be facilitated by, quite frankly, our relationships with our First Nations communities. And we are working very hard and very close to having a participation agreement with our First Nation partners, which will essentially allow us to bridge our activities in through consultation, through engineering, and then ultimately through permitting.
Yeah. So, yeah, you mentioned earlier you're hunting elephants there, and that's a spendy proposition. So, talking about bringing a partner in, that was going to be my question, I guess. So, I guess before I let you go here, Sam, maybe give us a health check on the company. The where are you at? How much fuel is in the tank to kind of carry out the mission you see this year before you do get to that level?
Yeah, absolutely. So as of the last quarter reported Q3, we have $8.2 million in cash pro forma for a private placement that we did with two individuals, and they're both extremely well known in the industry. We believe that this is a strategic investment. This starts the discussion around partnerships. One of the individuals, his name is Michael Gentile, who's a very, very well followed individual, very well respected, ex-institutional fund manager who really has built a tremendous following. People sometimes describe him as the younger Eric Sprott. And then, of course, Pierre Baudouin, who was the COO of Silvercrest, but probably importantly, he was the COO of Detour, another very large copper gold mine rather in Canada, which quite frankly, he has gone through the diligence and he has recognized how achievable and developable this project is relative to a lot of the projects that he's seen. So a lot of credibility and a lot of support coming from that groundswell of people that know what they're talking about. So in 2022, we are going to continue on that groundswell to ensure we have those types of strategic partnerships, whether it's strategics or whether it's investors or strategic companies or corporations or royalty companies. These are to the types of organizations that can help keep that momentum going, which has quite frankly been very, very good over the last year and a half since we've joined. We've, I'd say, very comfortably outperformed our peer groups, just given where we have been and where we are today. But there's still a long, long way to go. We're currently trading at less than 10% of our net asset value as defined by three analysts. So these are third-party analysts, analyst consensus. And so, whilst we have overperformed, we're starting to get the message out. You had mentioned, Rob, this is the first time that you've heard the story and this hasn't been on your radar. That's exactly the issue about this company. And as we start to accumulate this groundswell of support, then that valuation gap, I believe, is going to vanish very quickly.
Okay, lots to pay attention to. We'll certainly keep our eye on the wire. Again, that's Sam Lee. He's the president and CEO, Northisle Copper and Gold, NCX, Toronto Venture Exchange. Sam, thanks for taking the time in that update, and we'll check back in when you have some more news to report.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate the time. Thanks, everybody.